The night my brother sold me, the snow had been melting for 2 days, and the saloon back room smelled of wet wool and pine resin, and the iron stove that hissed against the far wall. I had walked through that back room door in my faded gray wool traveling dress, and my charcoal shawl, and the thin silver crucifix our mother had pinned to my throat the morning before she died, and I had stopped in the doorway, and I had looked at the small wooden table where the bill of sale lay folded between my brother and the man who had come down from the high country to buy me. I was 22 years old. The man at the table was 33. My brother was 26, and his hands were shaking. "Sit down, Maureen," my brother said. He did not say it kindly. He said it the way a man says a thing he has already decided. "Sit down. We are settling the matter." I did not sit down. I looked at the mountain man across the table. He was bare-chested in the lamplight because he had ridden in fast and stripped his coat against the warmth of the stove and not bothered to put it back on. And the long, deep diagonal scar that ran from his right temple to his right collarbone caught the lamp the way a creek catches the moon. His pale blue eyes were on me. They had been on me since the moment I crossed the threshold. They were not hungry. They were steady. The way a man looks at a horse he is not yet sure he wants to take home. My brother slid the folded paper across the table. $480, he said. Gold, by Saturday, or Pollock's men cut my throat in the alley behind the El Dorado. You know they will. I know they will. He looked up at me, finally. And he is offering it tonight. I felt the floor under my plain black ankle boots. I felt the small silver crucifix lift and fall against the hollow of my throat. I felt the wet wool smell of my own shawl. I did not feel the thing I had thought I would feel, which was crying. I had cried for our mother in 1879, and I had cried for our father a week later, and I had not cried since, because in the 4 years between our parents' graves and the back room of the El Dorado saloon, I had become the kind of woman who keeps house for a man who loses at faro and does not weep about it. "Sit down, Maureen," my brother said again. I walked past him. I did not look at him. I did not turn my head when I came around the corner of the table. I walked past my older brother as though he was a chair I had decided not to sit in, and I came to the side of the table where the mountain man sat, and I drew out the wooden chair across from him, and I sat down, and I folded my hands on the table in front of me, and I lifted my eyes to his. "Mister," I said, and my voice came out steady, "if you have something to say to me, say it to me." The mountain man did not answer for a moment. He looked at my hands on the table. He looked at the small silver crucifix at my throat. He looked at the doorway behind me where the kerosene lamp was hissing against its wick. Then he looked at my brother. "How old is she?" the mountain man said. He did not phrase it like a question. 22, my brother said. "How long since your folks died?" 4 years come July. "And in 4 years," the mountain man said, "what have you given her?" My brother's mouth opened. My brother's mouth closed. The mountain man reached out with his calloused right hand, and he picked up the bill of sale. He did not unfold it. He held it folded between his thumb and his first 2 fingers, as if it were a thing he did not want the rest of his palm to touch. He pushed his chair back. He stood up, bare-chested in the lamplight, 6'2" and broad, and the deep diagonal scar dark against his sun-tanned skin. And he walked the 4 steps from the table to the iron stove against the back wall. He opened the stove door with his left hand. He held the folded paper out into the orange light. The corner caught. The flame ran up the fold. He did not let go until it had taken the whole sheet. And then he opened his fingers and let what was left of it fall into the coals. He shut the stove door. He turned around. He looked at my brother and he said, very quietly, "She is not yours to sell. She was never yours to sell. Walk." My brother did not move. "Walk," the mountain man said. I heard the saloon piano start up in the front room, 3 rooms away, a bright, drunken polka about a girl named Sue. I heard a horse stamp in the alley outside. I heard my own heart in the small bones behind my ears. The mountain man reached into the inside pocket of the buffalo coat he had thrown over the chair back, and he drew out a small leather pouch, and he set it on the table in front of my brother. The pouch made the soft, clinking sound that only one thing in this country makes. 480 in gold, he said. It is for Pollock, not for you. You take it from this room, you walk it down to the El Dorado, you set it on Pollock's bar, and you tell him your debt is paid. Then you get on a horse and you go. North, west, anywhere your sister cannot see you from a window. If you come up the mountain after her, if you cross my line on the ridge, if I see you on my road or near my fence or under my porch eave, I will answer you with lead. Do you understand me? My brother's hand closed around the pouch. I understand you, my brother said. Look at her, the mountain man said. My brother looked at me. I do not know what was in my face in that moment. I had folded my hands on the table, and I had not unfolded them. I was looking at my brother the way a woman looks at a coat she is about to take off and not put on again. Tell her you are sorry, the mountain man said. My brother's jaw worked. He did not look like a man who knew that word. I am sorry, Marin, my brother said. I did not answer him. The mountain man waited a full breath, and then he tipped his head toward the door. My brother stood up. He took the pouch. He walked the length of the back room with the gold in his fist and the sweat dark on the back of his shirt, and he opened the door, and he was gone. The mountain man did not sit back down. He stood at the iron stove with the orange light on the long scar at his temple. And he looked at me for a long time, and at last he said, I do not know your full name. Marin Hollis, I said. Marin Hollis, he said, like he was setting it down somewhere safe. I am Caleb Ridge. I have a cabin 5 hours up the road. It has 2 rooms and a stove and a bed I can give you, and a hearth I can sleep in front of. I am not asking you to be my wife. I am not asking you to be anything to me. I am offering you a quiet place to stand for as long as you need to stand somewhere quiet. You can decide what comes after. I lifted my hands from the table. Mr. Ridge, I said, and my voice did not shake. I will come up the road with you tonight. He nodded once. He pulled the buffalo coat off the chair back and held it out to me across the table, and I took it from his hand. It was warm from the stove. It smelled of pine and wood smoke and the high country. If this story is finding you tonight, take a moment to press the like button below. It helps stories like this find the women who need them. We rode out of town in his wagon a little after midnight. The road climbed through silver tailings, then through cottonwoods along the creek, then into dark spruce where the snow was still thick. He did not speak much. After an hour, he said, Are you cold? I'm all right. There is a wool blanket under the seat. Pull it out. I pulled it out. I put it across my lap. Better. Yes, Caleb. Marin. Yes. Are you afraid? A little. Of what? I do not know yet. Tomorrow I will know. Tonight I am too tired to know. That is honest. You did not have to do what you did tonight, Caleb. I did. You did not. Marin, listen. I came down off the mountain on Tuesday for spring supplies. I heard talk in the saddlers of your brother and Pollock. I went to the El Dorado on Friday because I had decided on the way down off the ridge that whatever the price of the paper was, I was going to put gold on it and burn the paper. I did not come into that back room to buy a wife. I came into that back room to put a fire under a piece of paper. You walked through the door and you sat across from me at the table without crying, and you folded your hands and you asked me to speak to you. So I am taking you home tonight. I would have burned the paper if you had cried. I would have burned it if you had screamed. I would have burned it if you had thrown a chair. But you sat down and you folded your hands. So I am taking you home. I did not answer for a long time. The road climbed. Caleb, what is it? Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Marin. Wait till spring. About 4 in the morning, he turned the wagon off the main road, and the track climbed another half hour, and the cabin was there, dark against the dark, with the snow piled against the north wall. He set the brake. He climbed down. He came around to my side, and he held up his hand to me, and I put my hand in his hand for the first time in my life. And he lifted me down off the wagon seat the way a man lifts a thing he has decided is breakable. He did not let go of my hand right away. Marin Hollis, he said, and his voice was rough from the cold. This is your door tonight. You sleep in the back room. The bed is made. The stove is laid. I will sleep on the floor by the hearth. I will not come past the doorway between the rooms unless you ask me to. You have my word. I believe you, Mr. Ridge, I said. Caleb, he said. Caleb, I said. He let go of my hand. That was the first night. The cabin was small, 2 rooms, a fat black iron stove against the inner wall, a stone hearth, a pine table, 2 chairs, a bench, a mantel above the hearth, a sharp's rifle on 2 pegs above the door. The back room had a rope bed, a small dresser, a window to the east. Caleb's old buffalo coat hung on the post at the foot of the bed. He gave me the back room, and he did not come past the doorway. The first morning I woke up in a bed for the first time in 11 nights, and I went out into the front room. He had built the fire up. He was sitting on the bench at the table in his buckskin trousers, bare-chested, the long scar at his collarbone catching the firelight, whittling at a piece of cedar with a small folding knife. He looked up when I came in. He did not smile. He nodded. There is coffee, he said, and there is biscuit dough on the board. I do not bake. I'm not too proud to learn, but not today. I bake, I said. Good, he said. How do you take your coffee, Caleb? Black, he said, and hot. There is no milk till I go out to the cow. How many biscuits do you eat? How many do you have? I will start with 6, I said. Then 6, he said. If there are 7, I will eat the 7th. There will be 7, Caleb. Then I will eat 7. Do you take salt or sugar in the dough? My mother used buttermilk and a pinch of salt. I have no buttermilk. There is salt in the tin on the shelf above the basin. There is sugar in the brown crock. Use what you want, Marin. The kitchen is yours. It is not mine, Caleb. He set the cedar down on the table. It is yours while you stand in it, he said. If you stand in it tomorrow, it will be yours tomorrow. If you stand in it next month, it will be yours next month. I am not a man who needs a kitchen. I have lived in this cabin 11 years, and I have used the stove to boil coffee and to heat beans and to fry bacon. I have not baked in it. I do not know how to make a biscuit. The kitchen is yours for as long as you stand in it. I did not answer him. I went to the brown crock for the sugar. I put a pinch of it in the dough on the board. I made 7 biscuits. He ate 7 biscuits. He drank 2 cups of coffee black. He stood up from the bench and he went out into the yard with the milk bucket, and that was our first morning conversation. I baked the biscuits. He drank the coffee. He stood up after a while, and he put on a flannel shirt because the morning had got cold against the cabin door, and he went outside to feed the 2 horses and the milk cow. And I stood at the kitchen window, and I watched him cross the yard in his shirt sleeves with the bucket in his hand, and I thought, very plainly, the way a woman thinks a true thing for the first time. I do not know this man at all. I did not know him at all. He had bought me out of a back room with $480 in gold, and he had burned the paper before I even sat down at his table. And now he was crossing his own yard in the morning sun with a milk bucket, and I did not know him. I decided in that moment that I would learn him. That was the start. The first week I learned the cabin. The second week I learned the yard. The third week I learned the road. I did not learn him until the 4th week. The 4th week I went out to the woodpile in the afternoon to get an armload for the stove, and he was already there with the splitting axe, and I stood in the cabin doorway in my faded blue calico work dress with my arms full of nothing, and I watched him split kindling for a while. He had stripped to his trousers. He was always stripped to his trousers when he worked. The deep scar moved on his shoulder when he swung the axe. His sharp 6-pack abs caught the late sun. When he saw me in the doorway, he set the axe down. "I will bring it in," he said. "No," I said. "I will split my own kindling." He looked at me. "Marin," he said. "I will split my own kindling, Caleb," I said. "I have lived 4 years in a house where a man let me carry his water and split his wood and bake his bread and lose his money for him. I am not afraid of the axe. I would like to learn to use it. If you will not show me, I will learn alone." He stood at the chopping block for a long moment. Then he picked the axe up, and he turned it in his hand, and he held it out to me handle first. "Come here," he said. I crossed the yard to him. He did not stand behind me. He did not put his hands over my hands. He set the kindling stick upright on the block, and he stepped back, and he said, "Eyes on the wood, knees soft. Drop the axe, do not push it. Let the weight do the work." I lifted the axe. I dropped it. The kindling stick sang and split and fell in 2 clean halves at my feet. I looked at him. He smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile. It was a small thing at the corner of his mouth, and his pale blue eyes had a little water in them, and he looked away after a half-second, the way a man does when he does not want to be caught feeling a thing. "There you go, Marin Hollis," he said. "There is a woman with an axe." I split kindling for an hour. He sat on the edge of the woodpile and watched me and did not lift a hand. When my arms began to shake, he took the axe back from me, and he ran his thumb along the haft, and he said, "How are your hands?" "They are fine, Caleb." "They are not fine, Marin. You will have a blister at the base of each thumb tonight, and another at the inside of your right palm tomorrow. Show me." I held my hands out. He looked at them. He did not touch them. "You will lance them yourself with a clean needle when they come up," he said. "Do not let me lance them. A man should not lance the blisters a woman put on her own palms. That is hers to keep. You hear me?" "I hear you, Caleb. Tomorrow you do half, the day after, all of it, and the 3rd day you do not split any, because your shoulder will tell you to rest, and you will listen to it." "All right. Marin." "Yes, Caleb." Why did you take it?" I looked at him. He was sitting on the edge of the woodpile in his buckskin trousers, with the splitting axe across his knee and the long, deep diagonal scar at his temple in the late afternoon light. And his pale blue eyes were on me, the way they had been on me at the saloon table. Why did I take the axe? Yes. Because in 4 years, I said, no man has ever held one out to me handle first. My father was dead. My brother put one in my hand only when there was a thing he needed split that he did not want to split himself. You held it out to me handle first, and you said, "Come here." I wanted to see what a thing held out handle first felt like. He was quiet for a moment. "How does it feel?" he said. "It feels like I have a chair under me, Caleb." "All right," he said. "All right, Maren Hollis." We went inside, and I baked corn pone, and he made the coffee, and that was the first night I sat down to supper at the pine table and felt that I had earned the chair under me. The 5th week, I named the stove. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The stove had a small place at the back where the iron had cracked and been mended with a piece of stovepipe wire, and the cracked place hissed when the fire got hot. And I had begun to talk to it the way a woman talks to a thing in a quiet house. Some mornings I would say, "Bertha, hush, you will have your breakfast." Some afternoons I would say, "Bertha, do not make me come over there." Some nights I would say, "Good night, Bertha, you old gossip," and shut the damper. I did not tell Caleb. I had been doing it for 2 weeks before he came in from the yard one evening, and he stopped in the kitchen doorway, and he looked at the stove, and then at me, and then at the stove, and he said, "Maureen, why did I just hear you tell my stove to mind her manners?" I looked at him over the top of the bread I was slicing. "Because she does not mind her manners, Caleb," I said. "She hisses at me all morning." "She has a name," he said. "Bertha," I said. He stood in the doorway. The deep scar at his collarbone caught the lamp the way it caught the lamp the first night in the saloon. His pale blue eyes had that water in them again. "Bertha," he said quietly, like he was tasting the name. "Why Bertha?" "Because she is fat, and she is opinionated, and she runs this kitchen, Caleb. That is a Bertha, all right. Are you angry? Maren, why would I be angry? Because she is your stove. You have had her 11 years. You did not give her a name." "I never gave her a name because it never occurred to me a stove had one. You walked in here in March, and in 8 weeks you found out her name." "I am not angry, Maren. I am wondering what else in this house has a name I do not know about. The cow is Pearl. The cow is Pearl, and the brown horse is Ezra, and the bay is Saul, and the spring out under the rocks is Hannah. Hannah. After my mother, she was the only water in our house growing up. I do not think she would mind." He was quiet. He looked at the stove. He looked at me. "All right, Maren Hollis. All right, Pearl and Ezra and Saul and Hannah and Bertha." He came across the kitchen, and he set his right hand on the iron top of the stove, gently, the way a man sets his hand on the withers of a horse he has known a long time, and he said, "Bertha, you behave for the lady of the house." He did not look at me when he said the lady of the house, but I heard it. That was the night I stopped sleeping with the door of the back room latched. The 6th week, the snow came back. We had a 3-day storm in late April that piled snow against the north wall up to the windowsill. And on the 2nd night of the storm, Caleb came in from feeding the cow with snow in his beard and ice in his eyebrows and his bare chest red where the wind had got through the buffalo coat. and he stood at the stove and he warmed his hands, and he said, "Marin, sit a minute." I sat down on the bench. He went into the back room and he came out with something in his hand. It was a small, flat tin can, the kind tobacco comes in, brown with red lettering, rubbed pale on the lid. He sat down across from me at the table. He set the tin between us. He did not open it for a long moment. "This is the only thing in the world that is mine," he said. "I want to show it to you tonight." "Caleb," I said. He opened the tin. Inside, on a little nest of folded muslin, was a small wooden hairbrush. It was a child's brush, no longer than my hand from wrist to fingertip. The wood was cherry, dark with age and oil. The bristles were soft, pale boar. There was a small letter C carved into the back of the handle. "My sister's," he said. I did not say anything. "My sister Cassie," he said. She was 14, I was 19. The grizzly had come the year before, and the doctor said the mauling would not kill me, and it did not, and the consumption came the year after, and the doctor said the cough would not kill her, and it did. I was in the bunkhouse the day she died. My mother brushed her hair and braided it and pinned it the way she liked it, and after they buried her, my mother gave me the brush, and she said, "Caleb, you are the last of us. You take it." I have carried it 11 years. I have not opened the tin since the year I built this cabin. He looked up at me. The pale blue eyes were very calm and very wet. "Marin," he said, "your name is the only kind word I have heard spoken aloud all day. I do not have any other small thing to give you tonight. I wanted you to see her. I wanted somebody who knows my house to know her name." I reached across the table, and I closed my hand around his hand. I did not say anything. I did not need to. He turned his hand over under mine, and he held my fingers, and we sat there for a long while, with the storm against the cabin walls and the small wooden hairbrush in its tin between us. And after a while I said, "Cassie." "Cassie," he said. "What was she like, Caleb?" He breathed in. "She was a small thing, auburn hair, not the color of yours, more red than yours, freckled across the bridge of the nose. She liked to sing. She liked to braid the manes of the horses. She liked to put a flower behind the ear of any man who would sit still long enough. She put one behind my ear at 15, the morning I rode out to the high country alone for the first time, and I rode the whole day with that flower in my hair, and I did not notice it until evening when I made camp, and I pulled my hat off. What kind of flower? A wild rose, a small pink one. It had wilted by then. I took it out of my hat, and I pressed it between 2 pages of the King James Bible my mother had put in my saddlebag, and it is still in there. I have not opened that page in 11 years. I do not need to. I know what it looks like. Caleb. What is it, Marin? Why are you telling me tonight? He looked at me across the table. He looked at the small wooden hairbrush in its tin between us. He set his hand on the lid. Because you have been in this house 7 weeks, Marin Hollis, and tonight when you came in from the privy in the snow, and you took your shawl off at the door, you said something under your breath. Do you know what you said? No. You said, "Home at last." Just like that. Under your breath. Home at last. I did not know I said it, Caleb. I know you did not. That is why I am showing you the tin tonight. A house is not a home until somebody says it under their breath without knowing they said it. You said it, so tonight I am telling you about Cassie, because it is your house too. I did not say anything for a long time. I reached across the table and I put my hand back over his hand on the lid of the tin. Thank you, Caleb. Do not thank me, Marin. You said it. I only heard it. We put the tin on the windowsill mantel above the hearth that night. He set it there himself, gently, the way he set his hand on Bertha. We did not move it again. The 7th week, Caleb went down the mountain to fetch the last load of feed before the high passes closed in mud. And he was gone 2 days, and the second morning I woke up in the bed alone, and I came out into the front room, and the cabin was cold because I had not banked Bertha well, and I could see my breath in the kitchen. I went into the back room. I took his old buffalo coat off the post at the foot of the bed. I put it on without permission. I went out into the yard in his coat with my own work dress under it. I split a half cord of wood. I fed the cow and I fed the horses. I came back inside in his coat, and I baked bread in his coat, and I drank coffee in his coat, and I sat by Bertha in his coat with my knees drawn up under it, and I thought, this is the warmest I have been in 11 years. When he rode in that evening, I did not take it off. I went out to meet him at the gate in his coat, with the buffalo collar standing up around my ears and the sleeves hanging 2 inches past my fingers. He pulled the wagon up, and he sat on the seat for a long moment, and he just looked at me, and then he climbed down, and he walked over to me, and he reached out, and he took the collar of his own coat in his hand, and he turned it up a little higher around my throat, and he said, "It suits you, Maren Hollis. You keep it. I have another. I took it without asking you, Caleb. I noticed. I am sorry. Maren, look at me." I looked at him. "In my house," he said, "you do not ask. You take. If a thing of mine is warmer than a thing of yours, you take it. If a thing of mine is closer to your hand than a thing of yours, you take it. If you wake up cold in my bed, you take any blanket on any peg in this house. You will not ask me. Do you hear me, Maren Hollis?" "I hear you, Caleb." "Then we will not have this conversation again." "All right. Did you split wood in my coat?" "Yes." "Did you bake bread in my coat?" "Yes." "Did you sit by Bertha and drink coffee in my coat?" "Yes." "Then it is your coat. I rode home thinking about whether you had eaten today. You ate, you worked, you sat by Bertha. The coat did its job. Keep it." I did not give it back. I wore it all spring. The first hard summer rain came in May, and Caleb spent a week up at the high pasture with the cattle, and I rode the 4 miles up the creek with biscuits and bacon for him in a basket. He came down off the ridge to meet me at the bunkhouse step in his buckskin trousers, bare-chested, his sharp 6-pack abs glistening with rain, his hair dark and dripping under his hat brim. "You should not have come up alone, Marine." "I came up alone. In the rain. In the rain. On Saul. On Saul. He minded me the whole way. Did you bring biscuits?" "I brought biscuits, and bacon, and a jar of last fall's apple butter, and a tin of coffee, and a dry shirt for you in case you had not packed one." "I packed 2. "Then I will take one home." "Marine." "What is it, Caleb?" "Sit down on the step." I sat down on the step beside him, and I took my wet shawl off my shoulders, and I laid it across my knees, and I gave him the basket, and he ate a biscuit, and he ate another, and he drank coffee out of the tin cup I had brought. "Maren, I am going to say a thing." "Say it." "I would have come down off this pasture in 3 days. You did not have to ride up 4 miles in the rain on Saul to bring me biscuits. I have eaten beans up here for 10 years. I would have eaten beans this week. You did not have to come." "I know." "Then why did you come?" "Because I wanted to see you." He looked at me. The rain was running off the brim of his hat. The long scar at his temple was dark with rain. "All right, Maren Hollis." "All right, Caleb Ridge." That was the day I knew I loved him. It was the kind of man my mother had wanted for me, and I had never said it aloud to her because she had died before I knew there were such men. In June, he taught me to shoot the sharps. The sharps lived above the cabin door on 2 iron pegs, and I had been afraid of it for 3 months. The way a woman is afraid of a thing she has been told is for men. He took it down one Saturday morning, and he laid it on the kitchen table. "Marin, sit down across from me." "All right." "This is a Sharps 50 caliber, made in Hartford in 1874. It has killed 2 elk in this house, and 1 mountain lion at the spring, and 1 man on the road below the cabin in 1877. It was my father's. It was his father's. It will be yours. Caleb, listen to me. A rifle in this country is a tool. It is not a man's tool. It is the tool of whoever has the steady hand on the day. Today, the steady hand is yours. I am going to teach you. By August, you will know her better than I do. By September, you will be the one who carries her. By October, she will be yours. Why are you teaching me? Because the day will come on this mountain when I am up at the high pasture and you are at the cabin alone, and there will be a thing on the porch that does not belong on the porch. It might be a bear. It might be a wolf. It might be a man. You will need to know what to do. What if I cannot? You can. What if I miss? You will miss the first 3. You will hit the 4th. After that, you will hit them every time. I will eat my hat if you do not. Now watch." He stripped it and cleaned it in front of me, and he showed me each part, and he named each part, and he made me name each part back to him until I could close my eyes and tell him every piece. Then he took me out behind the woodshed where he had set up a row of tin cans on a stump, and he stood beside me, bare-chested in the June sun, with a deep diagonal scar dark on his collarbone, and he said, "Eyes open, both eyes. The Sharps will throw your shoulder if you fight her. Lean into her. Tell her where you want the bullet." I missed the first 3 cans. I hit the 4th. By the end of July, I could put a slug through a tin lid at 50 paces. By the end of August, I could do it standing. By September, I could do it from the cabin porch with the rifle laid across my forearm the way Caleb laid it across his. He never fired the Sharps once that summer in front of me. Not once. He cleaned it with me. He sighted it with me. He carried it for me on rides. But he never raised it. I asked him about it one night in August, sitting on the porch step with his arm around my shoulders, and he was quiet for a long time. And then he said, "Marin, a man who has had to use a rifle once at a man does not pick it up the second time without a reason. I do not have a reason this summer. I am praying I never do. You used it once. I used it once. On a man. On a man. Will you tell me, Caleb?" "Yes, but not tonight. Tonight is too warm a night to put a story like that into. Ask me again in October when the snow comes. I will tell you in October." "All right." "Marin." "Yes." "You have not asked me about the scar." "I have not." "Why?" "Because you have not offered." He turned his head, and he looked at me in the porch lamplight. The long, deep diagonal scar at his temple was very dark in the soft yellow light, and I lifted my hand, and I touched it for the first time, lightly, with the pad of my thumb at the place where it began, at his hairline. "The Grizzly," he said, "August of 1869. I was 19. I had taken the dogs up to the high meadow, above where my father's first cabin was, looking for a yearling we had lost. There was a sow with a cub at the edge of a stand of pine. I did not see her until she was on me. I remember the dogs. I remember the smell of her. I remember the first swipe at the right side of my face. I do not remember the rest of the morning. The dogs brought my father up the trail by their barking, and he found me on my back with the bear gone, and my dog Tom dead at my shoulder. He carried me down to the cabin in his arms. I was 19, and I weighed 170 pounds, and my father carried me down 2 miles of mountain in his arms. He sewed me up at the kitchen table by lamplight that night. He used a needle from my mother's sewing tin and a piece of catgut from a violin string he had in a drawer. He sewed for 2 hours. He did not speak the whole time. I did not speak. When he was done, he set the needle down, and he kissed me on the forehead above the cut, and he said, "Caleb, you are going to live, and I am going to bury that bear at the high meadow before the moon goes down." And he did. That is the scar. I did not move my thumb from his temple. "Caleb, what is it, Marin? Will you let me kiss it?" He turned his head a little, and I leaned in, and I set my mouth against the long, deep scar at his temple, and I held it there, and after a moment he closed his eyes, and he let his breath out, and he said, "Nobody has ever asked me that before." They should have. There has not been anybody to ask. There is now. He pulled me into the curve of his arm, and we sat on the porch step until the lamp burned down, and we did not say any more about the scar that night. That was the summer I fell in love with him. I am putting it plainly because he deserves a plain word. I fell in love with Caleb Ridge in July of 1883 on a ridgeline above his high pasture with a basket of biscuits in my lap and his bare back in front of me and the long scar at his temple in the sun. And I said nothing about it for 2 months because I was not yet a woman who could say a thing like that out loud. He proposed on the first snow night of October. It came early that year. It came on the 17th of October, a sudden hard fall after supper, the kind of fall that takes the high country in a single hour. We had eaten beans and corn pone at the pine table, and he had washed the dishes for once because I had cut my finger paring an apple, and he had bound it with a strip of muslin and would not let me put it in the basin. After supper, he sat down by the hearth with a piece of cedar and his folding knife, and he carved the way he carved every night, and I sat across from him in the rocker that had been Cassie's mother's, and I darned a pair of his wool socks, and the snow came down outside in flakes the size of silver dollars, and the cabin was very warm and very quiet. Around 8 o'clock, he set the cedar down. "Marin," he said. "Caleb," I said. He stood up. He took the small tin tobacco can off the windowsill mantel above the hearth. He held it in his left hand. He took 2 steps toward me. He went down on one knee in front of the rocker, and he did not look up at me right away, and I felt my heart go very still in my chest, like a deer in a clearing. He opened the tin. He took out the small wooden hairbrush. He laid the tin on the floor beside him, and he held the hairbrush in both his hands, the way a man holds a thing he is afraid to break. And he looked up at me at last with the firelight on the long scar at his temple, and his pale blue eyes very calm and very wet. "Marin Hollis," he said, "I am 33 years old, and I have buried everybody who was mine to bury, and I have not asked another woman this question, and I do not have a ring to put on your finger, because I have not been to a town with a jeweler in 11 years. I have this hairbrush. It belonged to my sister, who I loved, and I have carried it for the 11 years I have been alone. If you will marry me, I want you to take this brush from my hand tonight and put it on the mantel as your own. I have nothing else to give you. I have a cabin and a piece of mountain and a milk cow and a pair of horses and a stove named Bertha and the rest of my life. I would like to give them all to you. I am asking." I could not speak for a moment. I set the darning down. I leaned forward in the rocker. I took his face in both my hands, the way a woman takes the face of a man she has decided she will keep. And I bent down, and I put my forehead against his forehead, and I held him there. "Caleb Ridge," I said into his beard. "Yes." He let his breath out. I took the hairbrush from his hand. I stood up. I walked to the windowsill mantel above the hearth, and I put the small cherry wood brush down where the tin had been, and I put it where the firelight could find it, and I turned around, and Caleb was still on his knee on the cabin floor. I held out my hand to him. He took my hand. He stood up. He did not kiss me right away. He held me against his bare chest, with my cheek against the long scar at his collarbone, and the snow coming down outside the window, and the iron stove ticking in the kitchen. And after a while, he tipped my chin up with his hand, and he said, "You are the only kind word I have heard spoken aloud all day, Marin Hollis." And he kissed me the way a man kisses a thing he has waited 11 years for. We did not name a date that night. We sat by the hearth until the fire burned down to coals and the snow buried the front step. And after a while, I fell asleep against his shoulder. And after a while, he carried me into the back room, and he laid me down on the bed in the buffalo coat I would not take off. And he sat on the floor by the bed with his hand on my hand until the storm had passed. He still slept on the hearth that night. He did not come into the back room until after we were married, the next May, in a cabin chapel down the mountain by an itinerant Methodist circuit rider. And that is a thing I am keeping for myself and not for this telling. But before May, before the chapel, before the circuit rider, there was November. November was the night my brother came back. I had not seen Hollis Hollis in 8 months. I had not heard his name spoken in 8 months. I had said his name aloud to Caleb exactly once in June on the porch step under a thunderstorm. And Caleb had let me say it and had not made me say it twice. 8 months on the mountain, and the only Hollis I had been was the one Caleb said. And Caleb said it the way a man says a name he has decided is sacred. It was the second week of November, and the snow had been on the ground a month, and the cabin smelled of wood smoke and venison stew, and the apples Caleb had hung in the rafters in October. I was at the stove. Caleb was at the table cleaning the sharps because the cleaning Saturday had come around again. We had eaten supper. The lamp was lit on the table. The dog had not started barking yet, but the dog had her head up. "Caleb," I said. "I hear it," he said. He set the sharps down on the table. A man's boots came up onto the porch. There was a knock. It was not the knock of a man who had come in friendship. It was the knock of a man who had decided, before he raised his hand, that he would knock once, and then he would push. "Maureen," my brother's voice said through the door. "Maureen, I know you are in there. Open the door, Maureen." I went still at the stove. Caleb stood up at the table. He did not pick up the sharps. He set both his hands flat on the pine boards, and he looked at me across the room, and I looked at him, and a thing went between us in the lamplight that did not need a word. "It is my brother," I said. "I know," Caleb said. I crossed the room to the wall by the door. I lifted the sharps off the 2 iron pegs above the door. I checked the chamber. I closed it. I laid the rifle across my right forearm the way Caleb had taught me to lay it across mine. And I looked back at Caleb, and I said, Stay inside." He did not answer for a half-breath. Then he nodded once. He stepped back from the table. He moved to the inside doorway between the front room and the back room, and he stood there in his buckskin trousers, bare-chested in the lamplight, the long, deep diagonal scar dark on his collarbone, his pale blue eyes on me. He did not put on a shirt. He did not pick up a rifle. He did not call out. He stood in the doorway between the rooms, and he kept his hands at his sides. I opened the cabin door. The cold came in around my ankles and lifted the hem of my work dress. The dog came up beside me on the threshold. My brother stood on the porch step in his old brown wool sack coat, with the collar turned up, and his sandy brown hair grown long and ragged under a beat-up hat I did not recognize. He had lost weight. There was a bruise at his cheekbone that had been there a week. His pale gray eyes flicked from my face to the sharps and back to my face. "Marin," he said. "Hollis," I said. "Marin, I rode 3 days. I rode 3 days up here. I came alone. I see that. Marin, the gold did not last." I did not move. "It was $480, Marin. It was a year's pay for a working man. It did not last me 3 months. I went back to the tables. I went back to Pollock. I owed him again by August. I borrowed off the mining boss. I lost that too. I have nowhere to go, Marin. I have nothing. I came up here because you are my sister, Marin. You are my sister. And that man took you off me for nothing in the back of the El Dorado, and I have come up here to ask you, because you are my sister, to tell him to give me a stake. A stake, Marin. A stake to start over. He has it. Anyone can see he has it. He took you off me for a pouch of gold, like it was nothing to him. He will not miss it. Marin, I am begging you." I felt Caleb behind me in the cabin doorway between the rooms. I did not turn my head. I knew where he was. I felt him the way a woman feels the weight of a hand on her back, even when the hand is not there. I lifted the sharps a little on my forearm. "Hollis," I said, "listen to me." "Marin, listen to me, Hollis. I am going to say this once. I am going to say it in my voice, not his. He is not coming out of that door. He is in the cabin. He is letting me say this." My brother's eyes went past me. I knew he was looking at Caleb in the inside doorway. I did not turn my head. "He is not coming out, Hollis. He is letting me say it because he knows I have learned to say it. So listen. The mountain man bought me from you on the 11th of March for $480 in gold. That is the truth. He paid you. That is the truth. He burned the paper. That is the truth, too. He burned it before I had sat down at the table. He did not buy me, Hollis. He bought me out of you. There is a difference, and you have 8 months to think about it on the ride back down. He paid $480 not to own me, but to keep you from being killed in an alley behind a saloon. I owe him my life because of it. You owe him your life because of it. You have stood on this porch tonight because of him. You will get on your horse and you will ride down off this mountain because of him. There is no more gold in this cabin for you, Hollis. There is not a dollar. There is not a dime. There is not a copper cent. There is not a pinch of dust. Not for a steak. Not for a meal. Not for a saddle. Not for a bottle. Not for a cup of coffee at the trading post in town. There is nothing in this house for you, Hollis, and there is not going to be. Not tonight, and not next month, and not when I am old. You sold me, Hollis. You walked me into a back room and you slid a paper across a table. You are my brother, and I will not forget that you are my brother. But you are not coming inside this door. You are not sitting at this table. You are not sleeping in this front room. You are not getting 1 minute of warmth out of this stove. You are going to turn around. You are going to walk back down the porch step. You are going to mount your horse. You are going to ride down off this mountain. You are not going to come back. If I see you on this road again, Hollis, if I see you under the cabin eave again, if I see you on the ridge above this cabin again, I will fire this rifle at your boots once as a warning, and after that, brother, I will fire it at your chest. I am not asking, I am telling. I have learned from the man inside this door how to tell a thing one time. Do you hear me? He stared at me. I lifted the rifle a little higher. Do you hear me, Hollis? His mouth opened. His mouth closed. He looked one more time past me into the cabin at Caleb Ridge in the inside doorway, and Caleb did not move, and did not speak, and did not raise a hand. And my brother saw what I had seen in the back room of the El Dorado 8 months before, that this man would let a woman handle her own ground, and that he would stand behind her while she did it, and that he would not lift the rifle for her, because he had spent 8 months teaching her how to lift it for herself. My brother took 1 step back off the porch. He took another step. He turned around in the snow at the bottom of the cabin step, and he walked the 12 feet to where his horse was tied to the rail, and he untied the reins, and he climbed up into the saddle the way a man climbs who has not eaten in a day, and he sat there for a long moment looking at me, and at last he lifted his hand a little from the saddle horn, and he let it fall. "Goodbye, Marin," he said. "Goodbye, Hollis," I said. "Marin! What? Was he good to you? The mountain man, was he good to you?" "Yes, Hollis. You sure?" "I am sure." "Better than I was?" "That is not a hard thing to be, Hollis." He nodded. He looked at his hands on the saddle horn for a moment. "Mama would have wanted that for you," he said. "Mama would have wanted a good one. She would have. Tell him I am sorry, Marin." "I will not, Hollis. He does not need your sorry. He has spent the 8 months between then and now teaching me not to need it either. You can carry it. It is yours." "All right, Marin. Hollis." "Yes. If you make it down the mountain alive tonight, do not gamble it. Do not put another $1 on a faro table. There is work in the rail camps in Montana for any man who will take a shovel. There is work in the silver mines in Leadville for any man who will take a drill. You have hands. Use them. Do not put them on a card table. Do you hear me?" "I hear you. Goodbye, Hollis." "Goodbye, Marin." He turned the horse. He rode the short way to the cabin gate. He went out through the gate and down the road into the dark and the snow, and in a minute I could not hear his hooves on the packed snow anymore. I did not lower the sharps for a long time. When I did at last lower it, my hands were shaking so hard that the rifle stock knocked against the iron of my wedding band on my left hand. The wedding band Caleb had given me in October, his mother's, which I had been wearing since the night he proposed. I did not turn around. I did not move from the threshold. I felt Caleb come up behind me at last. He stopped 1 full step short of touching me. He did not touch me. He waited. "Caleb," I said. "I am here," he said. "You did not come out." "No," he said. "I did not." "Why?" "Marin, you know why. Tell me anyway." "Because the man on the porch was your blood, and he was not mine. Because you have been getting ready to say what you said tonight, since the first morning you split your own kindling. Because if I had come out that door at his knock, I would have stood in front of you, and the rifle would have been in my hand instead of yours. And you would have spent the rest of your life thinking that you needed a man to stand in front of you. You do not. You never did. Tonight, you proved it. I was not going to take that from you. I was afraid. I know. My hands are shaking, Caleb. I know. He is my brother. I know that too. I leaned back, and only then did he take my weight, and he lifted the rifle gently out of my hand and set it on the table by the door, and he turned me around, and he held me against his bare chest, with my face pressed to the long scar at his collarbone. And he said into my hair, "You did it, Maren Hollis. You did it. I could not have done it if you had come out, Caleb." "I know," he said. "That is why I did not. You were afraid I could not." "No, Maren. I was sure you could. I have been sure since June. I was waiting on you to be sure. Tonight you were sure, so I let you stand." "How did you know in June?" "You hit the 4th tin can off the stump, Maren. You did not flinch. You set the sharps down. You wiped your hands on your apron. You said, again, that was June. I knew in June. You did not say. There was no reason to say. A thing a person knows about themselves is theirs to find out. I do not tell my horse he can jump a fence. I let him jump it. Same with a wife. I am not your wife yet. Marine, you have been my wife since you walked past your brother in the back room of the El Dorado without looking at him. The chapel in May is for the Reverend's paperwork. The wife I have had since March. I cried for the first time in 4 years. I cried into his chest at the cabin door with the snow blowing in around our feet and the lamp guttering on the kitchen table, and Caleb Ridge let me cry. He did not hush me. He did not pat me. He held me the way a man holds a woman who has just laid down a thing she has carried for 8 months without telling him she was carrying it. After a long while, my crying tired out, and he closed the cabin door behind us, and he barred it, and he sat me down at the pine table, and he poured me a cup of coffee out of the pot on Bertha, and he said, "Maren Hollis, you are not your brother's sister anymore. You are your own woman, and next May, in a chapel, you are going to be my wife." "Caleb," I said, "what is it?" "In May, I would like to marry you." "In May," he said. We sat at the pine table until the lamp burned out. We did not light another. We sat in the firelight off Bertha's open damper, and we did not talk much. And after a while, I got up, and I went to the windowsill mantel above the hearth, and I picked up Cassie's small wooden hairbrush, and I held it in my hand, and I said, very quietly, "Cassie, he is all right tonight. We are all right tonight. I am going to take care of him from here. You can rest." I put the brush back on the mantel. Caleb did not say a word from the table. But when I came back to the bench, his eyes were shining in the firelight. The winter ran its course. Caleb taught me to snare rabbit. I taught him my mother's apple butter. On Christmas Eve, he carved a small wooden bird and set it on the mantel beside Cassie's hairbrush. I am not handy at jewelers, Maren. I am handy at this. It is the prettiest thing in this house, Caleb. It is the second prettiest. I kissed him for the first time in front of the hearth without taking my mouth off his for a long moment. In late April, Caleb wrote a letter to a Methodist circuit rider in Silverton named Reverend Hodge. Reverend Hodge wrote back yes. The 11th of May came up out of the year clear and warm and full of bees. I was 22 and a half years old. Caleb was 33 and a half years old. We rode the wagon down the road together to the cabin chapel, at the bend in the creek, where the Methodists had built a one-room board church the size of a kitchen, with a single bench across the back and a small pulpit and a window without a pane. The Reverend Hodge stood at the pulpit in a black suit with the collar of his shirt unbuttoned because of the heat. There were 4 people in the chapel: the Reverend, Caleb, me, and an old woman from the next homestead down who had come up the road to be a witness because she had known Caleb's mother and had told him, when he asked her, that she would not have missed it. I wore a soft pale blue wool dress that Caleb had ridden 2 days into Silverton to buy for me in March, with small pearl buttons up the front and a thin lace collar at the throat. I wore my mother's small silver crucifix on the same thin chain I had worn in the back room of the El Dorado. I wore Caleb's mother's iron wedding band on my left hand because I had been wearing it since October and had not taken it off. Caleb wore a clean white shirt for the first time in 8 months. He wore it with the sleeves rolled up. He did not wear a coat over it. He stood at the pulpit in his white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and his buckskin trousers and his boots, with the long, deep diagonal scar at his temple in the May light, and his calm, pale blue eyes on me as I walked the 8 steps up the chapel aisle on the arm of the old woman from the next homestead, and his mouth was not quite smiling and not quite still. The Reverend Hodge said the words. We said the words back. Caleb slid his mother's iron ring off my finger long enough to put it back on my finger as a wife's ring instead of a promised woman's ring. And the Reverend said the words, and Caleb said the words, and I said the words. When the Reverend said, "You may kiss your bride," Caleb cupped my face in both his hands, the way he had cupped it on the snow night in October, and he set his forehead against my forehead, and he said, before he kissed me, low enough that only I could hear him, "Marin Ridge, there you are?" He kissed me. We rode the wagon back up the road to the cabin in the late afternoon. The wind came down off the high pasture and moved the new spring grass on the south slope. The bees were in the wild plum at the gate. We unhitched the team and we walked into the cabin together, and Caleb took off his white shirt at the kitchen table because he had worn it long enough, and I knew he would. And he stood at the iron stove in the late sun with the long scar at his collarbone in the gold light, and he said to me, "Mrs. Ridge, Bertha needs a stick of pine. Will you bring her one?" "I will, Mr. Ridge," I said. I carried in a stick of pine from the porch, and I laid it on Bertha, and I closed the damper, and I straightened up. And Caleb was looking at the windowsill mantel above the hearth, where the small cherry wood hairbrush sat in the gold light beside the small wooden bird he had carved at Christmas. He took my hand. He led me over to the mantel. He picked up the hairbrush. He set it in my palm. "This was Cassie's," he said, "and then it was mine, and it has been ours since October. From today, Marin Ridge, it is yours." I closed my fingers around it. "It is ours, Caleb," I said. He took the brush back, and he set it on the mantel where the firelight could find it, and where the spring sun could find it, and where any woman who came after us in this cabin 100 years from now might find it. And he stood at my side at the hearth, and we did not say any more words for a long time. If you have ever been handed across a table for someone else's debt, subscribe to Ridge and Vow. We tell these stories because some men know that the only thing worth buying is a paper they can burn. This is the end of what I will tell you tonight. There were 11 years of Caleb Ridge after the May wedding, before the lung sickness took him in 1894. And I sat by him at the end with the small wooden hairbrush in his hand and the small wooden bird in mine. And I told him the way he had told me on a snow night in October that he was the only kind word I had heard spoken aloud all day, and he died at home in the bed he had built, and I laid him in the ground beside his sister Cassie, and I never took his mother's ring off my hand. But this story tonight is not about how it ended. This story tonight is about how it began. It began in a saloon back room in March of 1883 with a folded paper and a stove door, and a man who had come down from the high country to buy me, and instead burned the bill of sale at my feet and turned to my brother and said, very quietly, the only sentence in this country that has ever made any difference to me. She is not yours to sell. She was never yours to sell. Walk. I am Marin Ridge. I was not sold. I was set down at a table in the back room of a saloon in March of 1883, and a man burned the paper that said, I had been, and I have lived every day since on the ground he gave me to stand on. And I am telling you the story tonight from that ground. Good night from the high country.